If you enjoy videos like this, subscribe to the channel before the video starts. Grandpa lived a quiet life. His house was small but cozy, with a little garden in front and flowers that he loved to care for. Every morning, he would wake up early, water his plants, and sit on his old wooden chair on the porch, sipping his tea. The neighborhood was calm, and everyone knew each other. Children played outside, neighbors waved hello, and life felt peaceful. Grandpa liked it that way. He liked quiet mornings and slow afternoons, reading his books or listening to the birds chirp. One sunny morning, Grandpa noticed something unusual in his mailbox. There, tucked under the usual letters and advertisements, was a thick white envelope. On the front, the letters HOA were printed clearly. Grandpa frowned. He had seen the HOA letters before, but usually, they were reminders about community events or small notices. This one felt different. It seemed serious. With trembling hands, Grandpa opened the envelope. Inside, there was a letter, neatly typed, that read, "Dear resident, we have received a complaint about disturbances coming from your property. Please contact the HOA office immediately." Grandpa blinked. Disturbances? Him? He had lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years and had never caused trouble. He wondered what it could be. Maybe a neighbor misunderstood something, or maybe it was just a small mistake. He shrugged and set the letter aside, thinking it would sort itself out. But the letter did not leave his mind. That afternoon, as Grandpa walked into his backyard to check his vegetable garden, he noticed something strange. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, was standing at the edge of her yard, staring directly at him. She waved, but it wasn't the friendly wave he was used to. Her eyes looked worried, almost suspicious. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Thompson," Grandpa called out. "Afternoon," she replied, but she didn't smile. She turned away quickly, looking over her shoulder. Grandpa felt a chill run down his spine. Something was off. Maybe she had something to do with the complaint? Or maybe it was someone else? Grandpa shook his head. He didn't like guessing, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was happening. That evening, the wind blew cold against the windows, and Grandpa sat in his favorite chair with a cup of warm tea. He tried to ignore the letter. He tried to read his book, but every time he looked outside, he felt as if someone was watching. Every small sound of the rustling leaves, a distant bark, the creak of his own door, seemed louder than usual. Grandpa sighed and told himself, "It's probably nothing. Just my imagination." The next morning, Grandpa went to check the mailbox again. Another envelope. His heart sank. This one was thicker than the last. He opened it carefully. Inside was a formal notice, this time with more words. "The HOA has received multiple complaints about unusual activity at your residence. Failure to comply may result in further action. Please contact the office immediately." Grandpa's hands shook slightly. Unusual activity, he whispered to himself. What could that mean? He thought hard. He hadn't done anything unusual. He hadn't disturbed anyone. Maybe a bird had made a mess in the neighbor's yard? Maybe the wind had blown something over? But deep down, he felt it wasn't that simple. The way the letter was written made it seem serious. That afternoon, Grandpa went for a walk in the neighborhood to clear his mind. He waved to a few neighbors, but some of them didn't wave back. Their expressions seemed different. Nervous, maybe. Or curious. He couldn't tell. But he felt eyes on him everywhere. Returning home, Grandpa decided to call the HOA office. A polite woman answered the phone, and Grandpa explained that he had received the letters but didn't know what the complaints were about. The woman replied carefully, "Sir, we cannot share specific details over the phone. An officer or representative may visit you to discuss this matter." Grandpa froze. Officer? Visit? His heart beat faster. Why would they come to my house? He asked himself. The rest of the day passed slowly. Every knock on the door made Grandpa jump. Every car that slowed near his house made him tense. He even checked the locks twice, though he never did that before. His mind raced with questions. Was someone watching him? Was there really a complaint? Or was this some mistake? That night, Grandpa sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside. The street was empty, and the only sounds were the faint rustling of leaves and the distant hum of a car passing by. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Something big. He didn't know what, but his instincts told him that this was not ordinary. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door startled him. He froze. Who could it be at this hour? He slowly walked to the door, peering through the peephole. No one. Just the empty porch. Grandpa's heart pounded. Maybe it was the wind? Maybe it was a branch tapping against the door? He tried to calm himself. But deep down, he knew that the letter, the complaints, and the strange looks from neighbors were leading to something. Something unexpected. Grandpa returned to his chair, trying to sip his tea, but his hands were shaking too much. He stared at the envelope on the table, the one that had started all this. Tomorrow, he thought, I will find out what this is about. I have to. As the night deepened, Grandpa couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the knock, the letters, and the mysterious complaints. He imagined all sorts of scenarios, some serious, some silly, but none seemed right. The suspense was unbearable. Who had filed the complaints? And why? Little did Grandpa know, the next day would bring something he never expected. Something that would shock him to his core. The kind of shock that would make him question everything he thought he knew about his peaceful neighborhood. And so, Grandpa sat by the window, staring at the dark street, unaware that his quiet life was about to change forever. The morning sun poured golden light over Grandpa's house, but he didn't notice it. His mind was too busy spinning with questions. Who had made the complaint? What exactly were they upset about? He felt a heavy weight pressing on his chest, a nervousness he hadn't felt in years. Normally, he would whistle while watering his garden, but today, he moved silently, checking the perimeter of his yard like a man expecting trouble. As Grandpa bent to inspect his tomato plants, he noticed a small envelope lying near the edge of his garden. It wasn't from the HOA this time. It was plain, unmarked, and slightly crumpled, as if someone had dropped it carelessly or left it on purpose. Grandpa hesitated. Something in his gut screamed at him to leave it alone, but curiosity won. He picked it up. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. A short note, written in neat handwriting. Not everything is as it seems. Watch carefully. Grandpa froze. His heart skipped a beat. Who would leave such a note? Was it a prank? Or a warning? He looked around the quiet street, but no one was there. The neighborhood, usually so calm, now felt strange, almost alive in a way that made him uneasy. He could hear faint sounds, footsteps that stopped when he turned his head, a car that slowed too long near his driveway, but every time he looked, nothing was there. He tried to shake it off. It's probably nothing, he muttered to himself. But deep down, he knew something was building. Something that would not wait for him to be ready. By midday, the tension in the air seemed heavier. Grandpa noticed neighbors whispering as they passed by, casting glances toward his house. Mrs. Thompson, who had always been friendly, now crossed the street when she saw him. A young couple a few doors down peeked from behind their curtains. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with every passing minute. Grandpa felt trapped in a bubble of suspicion, where even the most ordinary sounds, a dog barking, a wind chime moving in the breeze, felt like signals. Determined to understand, Grandpa decided to investigate. He went around his property, checking for anything unusual. The garden was fine. The fence was sturdy. Nothing seemed out of place. But then, at the far end of the yard, he saw it, a small, unfamiliar footprint pressed into the soft soil near his shed. It wasn't large, but it was distinct. Someone had been here. Grandpa's mind raced. A neighbor? A stranger? Or, was this related to the complaint? He couldn't tell. The mystery thickened, twisting around his thoughts like the vines on his garden trellis. That evening, a shadow moved across the living room wall. Grandpa turned quickly, but nothing was there. The house, which had always felt like a safe haven, now felt foreign and tense. Even the familiar creaks of the floorboards seemed louder, as if warning him that something was coming. He tried to focus on his tea, on the little comfort of warmth in his hands, but the note, the footprints, and the strange energy outside would not let him rest. Then, just as darkness settled, there was a knock at the door. Not a soft, polite knock, but firm and deliberate, echoing through the quiet house. Grandpa froze, gripping the edge of his chair. "Who could it be at this hour?" he whispered. His voice sounded small against the heavy silence of the house. Cautiously, he approached the door, peering through the peephole. No one. Only shadows. The wind rustled, a branch tapped against the siding, but Grandpa's heart pounded. Something was wrong. The silence after the knock was heavier than any sound. It pressed in on him, making the room feel smaller, tighter. He backed away from the door, trying to calm himself, but a chill ran down his spine. The note from earlier flashed in his mind, "Not everything is as it seems. Watch carefully." Now it made sense in a terrifying way. Something was happening, something he couldn't see yet, but it was coming. Grandpa spent the rest of the night unable to sleep. He sat in his chair, staring at the door, listening to every creak, every whisper of the wind. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. The peaceful life he had known for decades had dissolved overnight into uncertainty and fear. He didn't know who was watching, or why, but he was certain of one thing: tomorrow, whatever this was, would reveal itself. And when it did, nothing would be the same again. As he finally drifted into a restless sleep, a faint light flickered outside his window, moving quickly from the edge of the garden to the front porch. Grandpa did not see it. He did not know it was there. But whatever or whoever it was waiting, biding its time, ready to make the next move. The next morning, Grandpa woke up with a heavy feeling in his chest. The strange note, the mysterious knocks, the footprints, they all lingered in his mind like shadows he couldn't shake. He tried to calm himself with breakfast, but even the smell of toast and tea couldn't settle the tension. Every sound outside his house made him jump. The wind? Or something else moving? He didn't know. Then, around mid-morning, a loud, sharp knock echoed through the house. It was different this time, authoritative, commanding, and unmistakably official. Grandpa's hands trembled as he walked to the door. His heart was pounding like a drum in his chest. He looked through the peephole. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, their faces serious, radios clipped to their shoulders. For a moment, Grandpa's mind went blank. Police? At his door? Over a complaint? He felt a mix of fear, confusion, and disbelief. He fumbled with the door handle, finally opening it a crack. "Good morning, sir," one of the officers said calmly, but there was a firmness in his tone that made Grandpa stiffen. "We're here regarding a complaint filed with the HOA about activity at your residence. May we come inside to ask a few questions?" Grandpa swallowed hard. He had never been in trouble with the law before. His life had always been quiet and simple. Sure," he stammered, stepping aside to let them in. The officers entered, their boots echoing on the wooden floor. One officer scanned the room carefully, his eyes lingering on the furniture, the walls, the small details of Grandpa's home, as if he were looking for hidden clues. Grandpa felt exposed. Every creak of the floor under their weight sounded louder than normal. "Sir," the second officer began, "we understand this may be confusing. We just need to verify a few things about the complaint." Grandpa nodded, his throat dry. Of course. But I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong." The first officer's eyes softened slightly. "We understand, sir. Complaints happen sometimes. But it's our job to check, just to be safe." As they asked their questions, Grandpa's mind wandered. He thought about the mysterious note, the strange knocks, and the footprints in the garden. Could they be connected to the complaint? He wanted to explain everything, but he wasn't sure if the officers would believe him. Then, the first officer glanced toward the backyard. "Sir, we may need to inspect outside as well. Is that okay?" Grandpa's stomach twisted. He nodded silently. They stepped outside, their eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The garden, the fence, the shed, it all looked normal, but the officers moved deliberately, checking the smallest details. Grandpa followed nervously, wondering what they could possibly find. Then it happened. One officer stopped near the edge of the garden, bending down to examine something. Grandpa's heart skipped a beat. "Sir, did you know there's an unusual setup here?" the officer asked, pointing at a small pile of gardening tools stacked oddly near the shed. Grandpa blinked. "Ah. I just put them there yesterday." The officer nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Grandpa felt the tension rise like a storm cloud ready to break. Every second seemed to stretch, each moment heavier than the last. Then, from the corner of his eye, Grandpa noticed movement near the front gate. He froze. A shadow darted across the lawn, too fast to be a person. He turned toward the officers, but they were focused on the garden, unaware of the new development. Grandpa's chest tightened. He wanted to call out, to warn them, but the words stuck in his throat. His mind raced. What if the complaint isn't about me at all? What if it's something else entirely? Suddenly, one officer straightened and spoke into his radio, his voice low but firm. "We found something unusual near the property line. Sending backup to check." Grandpa's knees went weak. Backup? Why would backup be needed for a simple HOA complaint? His mind spun with possibilities, none of them good. The air seemed to thicken around him, heavy with anticipation. The calm life he had known, the quiet mornings and slow afternoons, had vanished. In its place was uncertainty, tension, and fear. And the next moment, the next discovery, would change everything he thought he knew about his home, his neighborhood, and even himself. Grandpa looked at the officers, their expressions serious but professional, and whispered under his breath, "What have I gotten myself into?" At that very moment, a sudden noise came from the backyard shed, a loud clatter, as if something had fallen. Grandpa jumped, and the officers immediately turned toward the sound, hands instinctively moving toward their belts. Grandpa realized, with a sinking feeling, that the day he thought would be simple, quiet, and ordinary, had become a moment of suspense and mystery. A day where every shadow, every sound, and every knock at the door held meaning. And whatever was about to unfold, it would shock him more than he could imagine. Grandpa's heart was still racing from the clatter in the shed. The officers were carefully inspecting every corner of the backyard, and Grandpa followed, trying to appear calm, though inside he felt like his mind was spinning. He had imagined the complaint could be about noise, or maybe a neighbor thought he had been careless. But now, with police in his yard, he realized that whatever it was taken very seriously. One officer crouched near the garden shed, pointing at a pile of sticks and gardening tools. "Sir," he said, "someone reported unusual activity here. We need to understand exactly what's going on." Grandpa blinked. "Unusual activity?" "It's just my garden," he said slowly. "I was planting vegetables, fixing the shed, nothing unusual." The officers nodded politely but continued checking the area. Grandpa tried to explain, but he felt his words slipping away. Something about this complaint didn't make sense. Then, the first officer spoke into his radio again. "We checked the yard. Nothing dangerous." Requesting clarification on the complaint specifics from the HOA. Grandpa held his breath. A few minutes passed. Then, the second officer looked at him and said, "Sir, the complaint says suspicious movement, possible trespassing." Grandpa froze. "Trespassing? But I'm the owner of this house," he exclaimed, a nervous laugh escaping him. "I don't understand." The officers exchanged glances but remained professional. Grandpa scratched his head, trying to figure out what could have been so suspicious. He thought about the note he had found, the shadows, the footprints. Had someone misunderstood him completely? Then, the first officer carefully lifted a small tarp near the shed. Under it was a giant pile of leaves and branches. Grandpa blinked. He had been clearing the yard the day before, stacking leaves to compost later. He had not realized it looked unusual. The second officer's face softened a little. "Sir, neighbors reported seeing movement near the shed. They thought someone might be sneaking around at night." Grandpa's mouth dropped open. "Sneaking around? That's just me, cleaning the garden." He laughed nervously. "I don't go out at night. I go to bed early." The first officer nodded slowly. "It happens. Sometimes, people see shadows, small movements, and think the worst. Your neighbor said they saw someone in the yard after dark and filed the complaint immediately." Grandpa shook his head in disbelief. The tension that had weighed on him for days suddenly shifted into something almost absurd. He had been terrified, imagining all sorts of scenarios, but it turned out, it was just a simple misunderstanding. Then, a neighbor appeared at the fence, a young man from 2 doors down. He looked embarrassed, scratching the back of his head. Hi, Mr. Thompson," he said quietly. I'm really sorry. I saw shadows moving near your shed and thought it was someone sneaking in. I called the HOA immediately. I didn't know it was you." Grandpa's tension melted into a mixture of relief and amusement. He chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, son, you almost caused me a heart attack over a few leaves and shadows." The officers smiled politely, understanding the situation now. "It's good we checked," one of them said. "Better safe than sorry." Grandpa walked around the yard, pointing at the pile of leaves. "See? Nothing suspicious at all. Just me, old and slow, cleaning my garden." He laughed softly, realizing how small misunderstandings could grow into big problems. But even as relief settled in, Grandpa couldn't shake one thought, the note he had found earlier. Not everything is as it seems. Watch carefully. The note now seemed prophetic. Something had caused a chain of events that scared him nearly out of his mind, even if the actual problem was simple. The officers finished their inspection and nodded politely. "Sir, the complaint is cleared. We're satisfied there's no danger. Everything is fine." Grandpa exhaled slowly. Finally, the tension that had gripped his chest for days began to ease. The police left, and the neighborhood seemed quiet again. For the first time in days, Grandpa felt a sense of calm. He walked back into his house, smiling softly. The mystery was solved, but the day had reminded him of how quickly small things could spiral into confusion and fear. Even something as simple as cleaning a yard at the wrong time could create a storm. Grandpa looked at the note once more. He smiled wryly. "Well, maybe it wasn't a warning about danger," he said. "Maybe it was just a reminder to pay attention to the little things and how others see them." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Grandpa sat on his porch chair, sipping tea, listening to the distant sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting. The day had started with fear and ended in relief, but one thing was certain: life in the neighborhood, quiet as it seemed, could be full of surprises. And Grandpa knew, deep down, that the next surprise, whatever it would be, was only a matter of time. Grandpa thought the day's chaos was finally over. The police had left, the neighbors' misunderstandings had been cleared, and the sun was dipping behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the quiet street. He tried to relax on his porch, sipping his tea, letting the warm evening breeze calm his nerves. For a moment, everything seemed normal again. But the quiet didn't last. A sudden noise came from the shed. Not a soft rustle like before, but a loud crash, followed by a metallic clang. Grandpa jumped to his feet, heart racing. He had double-checked the shed when the police were here. Nothing should have moved. Nothing should have fallen. Cautiously, Grandpa approached the shed. He felt the hairs on his arms stand up. The wind seemed louder now, whistling strangely through the trees, as if warning him to stay back. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to call someone, but another part, curiosity, stubbornness, or perhaps pride, urged him to see what had caused the noise. He slowly opened the shed door. Inside, the first thing he noticed was a faint shimmer of light. Something glowed in the corner, moving slightly. Grandpa squinted. At first, he thought it was his imagination. But then he saw it, a small, old wooden box he didn't remember putting there. It was tucked under a pile of gardening tools, almost invisible until now. Grandpa's hands trembled as he reached for it. The box was locked, but a key hung from a nail nearby, as if waiting for him. He couldn't explain why, but a strange sense of anticipation filled him. He took a deep breath and unlocked it. Inside, the box was filled with letters, old letters, yellowed with age, tied together with a faded ribbon. Grandpa's eyes widened as he recognized the handwriting. It was his own, but from decades ago. He carefully untied the ribbon and opened one of the letters. The words jumped off the page. It was a letter he had written to his childhood best friend, a story about a hidden treasure he and his friends had discovered as children, something they had sworn to keep secret. Grandpa's hands shook. How had this box ended up in the shed? He remembered burying it in the backyard when he was young, but he thought he had forgotten about it completely. As he read further, Grandpa realized that the letters contained clues, maps, sketches, and notes about the small treasures they had hidden around the neighborhood. The mystery wasn't about trespassing or HOA complaints. It was about something much older, something that had been waiting for decades to be discovered. Grandpa's mind raced. Could the strange noises, the shadows, the mysterious note from earlier, all of it, be connected to these hidden secrets? His backyard, once calm and familiar, suddenly felt like a place full of mysteries, secrets, and forgotten stories. And then he noticed something even stranger. Behind the shed, partially hidden by a bush, was a small trapdoor he had never seen before. It looked old, covered with dirt and leaves, but clearly functional. Grandpa's heart pounded. He realized the discovery was bigger than he had imagined. The letters had led him here for a reason. Something important, something shocking, lay beneath. He paused, thinking about the police, the neighbors, the complaint. It all seemed so trivial now. The real mystery was here, in his own backyard, waiting for him to uncover it. Grandpa swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and opened the trapdoor. Below, a narrow staircase led into darkness. A faint smell of earth and old wood drifted upward. Grandpa's curiosity outweighed his fear. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped down carefully, each creak of the stairs echoing through the hidden space. What he found at the bottom made him gasp. A small room, hidden beneath the backyard, filled with boxes, artifacts, and old items from the neighborhood's past. There were toys, coins, photographs, and journals, everything preserved as if frozen in time. Grandpa realized that the disturbances the neighbors had complained about could have been caused by something much simpler, the hidden nature of this space, small movements, shadows, and lights that no one had understood. Grandpa's eyes sparkled with excitement and disbelief. The letters, the box, the shed, even the HOA complaint, it all led to this. A hidden world, forgotten for decades, full of stories waiting to be rediscovered. He sat down on an old wooden crate, overwhelmed. The mystery that had terrified him for days now felt like an adventure, a journey back to the past, into secrets he had once created and long forgotten. Grandpa smiled to himself. The day had started with fear, tension, and police at the door, but it ended with a shocking discovery that was far more extraordinary than he could have imagined. And he knew, deep in his heart, that the adventure was just beginning. Grandpa climbed out of the hidden room, his hands dusty but his eyes shining with excitement. The backyard, once ordinary, now felt alive with secrets. He looked around to the shed, the small trapdoor, the piles of leaves, and realized how a simple misunderstanding had turned his quiet life into a full-blown adventure. By the time he returned to the porch, the sun was low, painting the neighborhood in warm oranges and golds. The police had left, neighbors were inside their homes, and everything seemed calm again. Grandpa sat in his favorite chair, taking a deep breath, but his mind was buzzing. He couldn't stop thinking about the treasures and letters he had discovered, the hidden room under his backyard. It was like discovering a whole new world he had forgotten existed. Just then, the young neighbor, the one who had made the complaint, timidly walked up the driveway. He looked nervous, holding a small basket of cookies. "Mr. Thompson. I wanted to apologize again," he said softly. "I didn't know. I'm really sorry for causing all that trouble." Grandpa chuckled warmly, waving him closer. "Young man, it's all right. You just saw shadows and got worried. We all make mistakes. But, maybe next time, come talk to me before calling the HOA. The neighbor laughed nervously, nodding. I promise, sir. And, wow! That hidden room, it's amazing. Grandpa smiled, a spark of pride in his eyes. Yes, it's been hiding for a long time. My childhood friends and I built it, long ago. I forgot about it, but now, well, it's like finding a piece of history in my own backyard. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Soon, a few curious neighbors peeked over the fence, eyes wide with fascination. Grandpa invited them to see the letters, the maps, and even a few small treasures he had unearthed. Laughter and wonder replaced the suspicion and tension that had clouded the past few days. Even Mrs. Thompson came by, smiling sheepishly. I guess I overreacted too, she admitted. I'm glad it was nothing dangerous, though I didn't expect a hidden room under your garden. Grandpa laughed, shaking his head. Well, sometimes life gives you surprises in the strangest places. By the evening, the backyard had transformed once again from a place of fear and misunderstanding into a place of stories, laughter, and shared history. Grandpa realized that the mysterious HOA complaint, the police visit, the shadows, and even the strange note he had received all led to this moment, a reminder that curiosity, patience, and a little courage could turn fear into discovery. Sitting back in his chair, Grandpa sipped his tea and looked at the sky. The world felt calm, yet alive with possibilities. He thought about the hidden room, the letters, and the secrets he had rediscovered. Life might be quiet, but it was never boring, not really. And as he looked around at his neighbors, laughing and exploring, Grandpa knew that sometimes the biggest surprises come from the simplest places, and sometimes, a little fear is just the beginning of the greatest adventure. He smiled, thinking to himself, well, that was one day I'll never forget. But I have a feeling this backyard still has more stories to tell. The sun set completely, casting a soft glow over the neighborhood. Grandpa sat quietly on his porch, peaceful yet alert, ready for whatever the next day, or the next secret, might bring. The next morning, Grandpa woke up with a smile. The neighborhood was peaceful, the air fresh, and the events of the past few days already feeling like a dream. The police had gone, the HOA complaint was resolved, and the hidden room in his backyard had transformed his ordinary life into something extraordinary. Grandpa walked to his porch, sipping tea, and looked at his garden. The leaves he had stacked, the shed he had cleaned, and even the shadows that had once scared him, all of it now felt like pieces of a story he had lived. A story full of fear, curiosity, and discovery. As he watched the neighbors start their day, Grandpa realized something important. The events, though strange and tense, had reminded him and everyone else of a simple truth: life is full of surprises. Sometimes, what seems scary or mysterious at first is only a chance to see the world in a new way. He thought about the young neighbor who had made the complaint. At first, it had caused stress and worry. But in the end, it led to laughter, friendship, and the uncovering of a hidden world beneath his backyard. Even Mrs. Thompson, who had worried so much, had come to marvel at the discovery. Grandpa chuckled softly. Life had a funny way of teaching lessons when you least expected them. Grandpa picked up the old letters from the hidden room and traced the handwriting with his fingers. These letters, forgotten for decades, were more than just paper. They were memories, stories, and reminders of the adventures of his youth. They had been waiting for him to rediscover them, just as life had been waiting for him to embrace curiosity and courage. He looked around his neighborhood, the streets bathed in soft morning light, and felt a deep sense of peace. Yet, he couldn't ignore the thrill of possibilities. The hidden room had secrets he had not fully explored. There were still letters to read, boxes to open, and stories to uncover. The day might seem calm, but Grandpa knew that adventure could always find you, even in your own backyard. And so, Grandpa sat back in his chair, sipping tea, smiling at the simplicity and wonder of life. He realized that the past few days had taught him a lesson. Fear often hides opportunity. Misunderstandings can lead to discovery. And the smallest actions, like cleaning a yard or noticing shadows, can uncover the biggest surprises. As he watched a butterfly land on a flower in his garden, Grandpa whispered to himself, life is full of mysteries. Some are scary, some are funny, but every one of them is worth seeing. He looked toward the hidden shed, knowing that there were still stories waiting below, waiting for him to find them. With a content sigh, Grandpa smiled and waved at a neighbor passing by. "Good morning," he called cheerfully. The world outside was calm, but Grandpa's mind was alive with curiosity, excitement, and gratitude. He knew that while the HOA complaint had started the adventure, the real story had been about paying attention, staying brave, and finding joy even in the unexpected. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a small thrill because he knew, for sure, that life still had plenty of surprises waiting just beyond the door. The end, for now.